Welcome to Do Your Dailies, the podcast designed to help you on your journey of addiction recovery. We're going to go through the big book of AA and use our collective experience, strength, and hope to help you understand what addiction recovery really looks like. So grab some snacks, sit back, press play, and dig deep. Thanks for being here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Do Your Dailies podcast. I'm your host, Chris, here with my buddies, Dave and Joe, and we are ready to dig back into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with you. Joe, how's today so far?
Today, for me, is like been just working up until just the point that we came together, and like I've been looking forward to jumping into a more complete conversation around there is a solution. And last time was just a deep dive into some very important information, and I think we will just continue that today. So for me, I've been looking forward to this opportunity all week. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. Dave, how are you?
Well, I'm quite good, thanks. It was chest day at the gym. It was. I'm not going to say how much I bench pressed because it's quite small. but I was there. And so the physical part is good and relaxed, and we will see how we do. I'm looking forward to it as well. We are dipping into a couple of very, very powerful pages. 25, 26, and 27 are some very powerful pages. I'm so glad they were written as part of the big book. A lot of powerful information there, so I look forward to it.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. This is before we started recording today, Dave, you were talking about a lot of gratitude, and this was unspoken. I don't think I mentioned this to you, but every day this month I've been focusing on 3 different things I'm grateful for. And so as you came in and just started telling me about your gratitude, I just felt kind of that, wow, we're on the same page. We're just speaking the same languages. And I think that happens a lot for us as we gather together, just kind of that same energy. And so,
it's an interesting, I'm glad you brought that up. It just reminded me. And another thing that I'm grateful for is that I have this opportunity to I guess, get raw, be transparent, and be honest. And so part of my morning routine is I get up fairly early, and I think I meditate, pray, and study. And boy. So my questions are pretty straightforward when I pray. What do I need to know about me? That was one this morning. And I'm glad to share what came. What came was my wife. And here in a few months, we're going to celebrate 43 years of marriage. And I thought, she's been teaching kindergarten for 30 years, and she's going to retire due to a lot of issues. And she's grateful and yet really still wanted to teach. And what really struck me today was how grateful I am for her. She makes me sandwiches. Just before coming here, I'd been to the gym, and I go home, and there were some cut up strawberries on the bar, and a yogurt and a bagel with some cream cheese, and her little touch. But this morning I thought, how grateful am I? And then I had this sinking thought, what would I do without her? What would it be like? What would my life be like today? That's what hit me. What would my life be like today if she weren't here? And my mind wouldn't go there. I don't have the capability to imagine what that would be like. So I sent her some texts, and we'll talk tonight. She's going to go teach water aerobics tonight, but we'll have some time. We sit down every night for about 30 minutes before she goes, and then we do it again at nighttime. But I give my word that I'll express that gratitude to her and I'll tell her what happened. And I won't go into all the details of what came to me, but just the notion that she's in my life. And this is what it has to do with this book and recovery. She would not be here if this didn't exist. If I wouldn't have followed these principles, there is no way I would have her in my life. No one would want to be around me. I wouldn't want to be around me. And so what I'm grateful for is the notion of prayer, that I was taught how to pray through the big book. I was taught how to ask through the big book. I was taught how to listen through the big book. And I practiced that principle this morning. And someone that I've been with for 42 years, the notion of who she is and what she is to me came to me. And it was just this pristine moment of just closing my eyes and just thinking about her and being grateful that that woman is in my life today. And that's the good stuff as far as that's the good stuff. So that's how my day's gone.
I love this. I love that.
Maybe I bench pressed a little more because of that. I don't know.
Yeah, gives you a little bit more strength, you know. I can think of times where we use anger and frustration to fuel a little extra strength. But that level of compassion and love, when we feel like we belong, when somebody loves us unconditionally, you know, it's an incredible feeling. So yeah, that's a really good thing to be grateful for. Thank you for sharing that. Last time when you were talking about the sandwich, I think my mouth started watering. I started to get a little hungry and all of that. So you're just doing it to me again this week, Dave. Thanks a lot. So
I asked him the other day, I said, that was a big sandwich. He said, yeah, I felt like you'd been working out a lot or hiking. And I said, there was a lot of meat on that sandwich. I said, yes, there was. I said, I had to chew for quite a while, but it was a piece of work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on the upcoming anniversary. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, anybody have an interest in starting the reading?
I'd like to.
Go for it.
Okay. So we're on the bottom paragraph of page 25. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, to accept spiritual help.
Stop.
That's deep.
Wow. He just threw out a giant piece of truth.
Yep.
And what he's asking is, call the ball. Tell the truth.
Yep.
If you, not anybody else, not your family, you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, then you got two choices.
I love how he says there's no middle of the road solution. Okay, he's saying there's no fin centers. He's like,
but what's he saying there? He said, if you are like us, not if you're a casual drinker, not if you're a guy that can go with it and go without. No, if you are like us and you are an absolutely, think of that. Two alternatives, seriously alcoholic as we were. And that's where that requires a tremendous amount of just cold, hard truth telling. What is the truth about my drinking? Right. What are the facts?
What's the condition?
And later in step 4, he talks about fact finding and fact facing. But right here, he introduces a huge if. If you are this, then here. If you are seriously alcoholic as we are, then you've got two choices. And one is basically you're going to the bitter end, and it's bitter. I know about you guys. I know you've seen it, but I've seen the bitter end in many, and it's bitter. And they did blot out the consciousness of their intolerable situation. They were clueless. They were just nothing. Or to accept open up and accept spiritual help. We don't need to even define it right here. We don't have to figure out what it is. I just don't want, all I have to figure out is I don't want that. I don't want a terrible bitter end. I am alcoholic and I don't want that. So I'm going to pivot and say, whatever you've got, I'll listen. I have to accept at least something. And that's it. I think that's such a powerful piece that he presents to us.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also important to talk about this concept of truth, because he does a really good job of like helping us understand that there are certain people that when they blot out the consciousness of their intolerable situation, that means they can't accept the truth. Yeah. You know, so really what's going on is those unfortunates that blot out their consciousness of like what's going on are most likely going to die. That's basically what he's saying. And he's saying that's the one road. And then the other road is that we've got to be honest, and then we've got to accept the spiritual help. And for me, that came in the form of many different hands. It wasn't just God himself. It was the people in AA. It was my sponsor. It was my family. It was a whole host of people that I had to be willing to just accept the help, because before then, I just wanted to do everything on my own.
I think there's another piece that he introduces here. We're often taught that is this condition we have, is it a disease or is it a moral condition? Do I have a disease or is this a moral condition? And the answer is yes. Of course it is. It's both. And we'll see later on in the description of the steps how. But right now, he's saying you have to make a decision. You have to, if you don't want to go to the end, you have to accept spiritual help. The only way we can accept something is to make a decision. That's a moral thing. This is where I am. This is the truth about where I am. I don't want that. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to pivot and I'm going to say, I'm going to decide to listen to somebody who apparently has done this, has gone through. They know where I stand. I just don't understand where they stand.
Right.
But I've got to have that faith. So what he's saying is accept it, make a decision to accept what spiritual help, however we're going to help you define that. Okay.
So often I think in this world, we are pushed to the all or nothing thinking. And there are times where we need to be in the gray area. This is highlighting two of the extremes. We're saying it's one or the other here. But then is it a moral issue or a choice or a disease? And we've heard the phrase, it's a disease of choices, right? And so that's where it's not one or the other, but both. And so we can't apply the principle of it's one or the other or gray area callously. We have to research. We have to pay attention. We have to look deeper into every scenario in our world, because sometimes that principle, yes or no, all or nothing, black or white kind of thinking is what's needed. And other times it's not. And so it's not easy, which can be frustrating and discouraging. But looking at this going, yeah, we need that spirituality piece. And like you said, it's not defining it. It doesn't have to be this person's spiritual preference. It doesn't have to be mom and dad's. It doesn't have to be the neighbors. It doesn't have to be whatever it is, the peer group. What's going on here? What's right to me? What feels right? What are my values? And there are those times that we'll talk more and more about this, but the times we go, well, I don't know how to even visualize a higher power, a power greater than myself. Well, define it for you. Visualize it by identifying your values. What feels genuine? What feels true? And I believe when we honestly do that, when we genuinely do that, we start getting answers. I don't think we get the answer right away. Sometimes we do. I've heard some stories from people who, it was like night and day. In my experience, the majority of the time, it's little by little. we start feeling something. We start feeling inspired. We start feeling a little bit more peace, a little lighter, less depressed, less anxiety, those kinds of things. This next line, read it, will you, Joe? The very last line of that paragraph is...
Sure. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort.
And that was something else that makes me to go, yeah, we wanted to. Not because there was a gun to my back, metaphorically speaking, not because I had to, because employer was on my case or spouse or partner was on my case or parents or whatever it was. I want something different. I need a change. I want to do this. So I want to make that distinction as well.
It's interesting that he says, we honestly wanted to and were willing. Remember what we taught? There it is. 2 out of the 3.
2 out of the 3. Spiritual experience. Right, smacking us right between the eyes again. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to be honest and we got to be willing, and then we're open. We don't even know what the answer is. I just don't want death, so I got to be open-minded to some suggestions. So, all right.
Okay. A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Young, who prescribed for him through experience. He made him skeptical. He finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to the doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respects to other problems, yet he had no control whatsoever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was a great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not have a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on earth where free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. Now, this is where I just want to stop. I mean, up to that point, here he is. Now, the Dr. Young he's talking about is Carl Jung, okay, of the prestigious, psychoanalytic theory, Dr. Young. And I'm sure he did believe that he caught all of the principles of what Dr. Young was teaching him, and that he really did believe that he was fixed. But the one thing that's really interesting is he mentioned in here that he wanted this thing called control, and he knew he didn't have it. Even after he thought he had mastered his mind and those principles associated with it. And we find that the doctor simply just tells him, sorry man, if you don't lock yourself up, if you don't get a bodyguard, you're like one of these people that's gonna unfortunately meet that end that we just talked about. Okay, and I know that was unacceptable to that guy because he still lives. That's what we're told. And then they jump us into this statement from the doctor.
So I'd just like to add a couple things here. So this is Dr. Carl Jung. My studies, I don't know that there's been a more celebrated psychiatrist. I mean, how many people did he work with over the years?
It's probably the most celebrated psychiatrist and psychologist that's ever historically that's ever been researched, and because of everything he published, he's probably even better known than Sigmund Freud.
So suffice it to say, this is a well-practiced, wise, experienced man. Now, this businessman, as my understanding is, this is Roland Hazard. He's a man of had ability, he had good sense, and a high character. And he had acquired, it says, such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs. So he had all these attributes, and then he couldn't, and had been coached and mentored and treated and all of it by Dr. Jung. And this is not disparaging Dr. Jung and his work in any way. He had done all that he could, and this man could not figure out why he had no control. So I might add that going back to Dr. Silkworth, he described the disease, the allergy and the obsession of the mind, but he didn't have an answer. Dr. Jung also describes the disease. He talks about these spiritual things, but he didn't have the solution. So we have doctors, and then where's the solution? The solution is here out of the book. And where did the book come from? It came from the tenets of the Oxford group. It came from Dr. Jung. It came from Dr. Silkworth, and coalesced and put together here. But he's about to make an extraordinarily powerful observation. Yeah. Dr. Jung is, and we'll read it, and then we want to dissect it a little bit. So
at this point, the doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description." Asterisk there. Asterisk, sorry.
So that, in my mind, that paragraph, those couple of paragraphs are extraordinarily powerful. So this is a man who has seen from high atop the mountain. He's seen many. Never have I seen one exist or success recovery, right? Ever to recover, except here and there once in a while. And this is to me what I appreciate so much is just his honesty and his candor. Vital spiritual experience. Why did he pick those three words? It's vital. We understand that word. We understand the word experience. But what does the word spiritual mean in this context? And then he goes on to say, to me, these occurrences are a phenomena. What's he really saying there?
Miracle.
I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
I don't understand them.
Yeah.
They're a miracle. And a miracle is defined as an occurrence not of natural situation that we don't understand. So to him, this is a phenomena, a miracle that I don't get. But he'd seen enough of them that he had started to, get some traction with these. And he says they appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. I think it's important that we understand what these words mean. An emotional displacement. We're doing a 180-degree shift in the way we think and the way we do things. Ideas, emotions, attitudes that once guided us are suddenly cast aside. Now, that's another interesting word. When you think of the word cast, that's not happenstance, is it? I'm thinking of fishermen, good ones. I've watched fly fishermen, and they don't fish. They hunt for fish. They see the fish, and then they put that line. And I don't do it, but right there. And when they're casting their nets, they know. And I've watched them. I mean, they know exactly where. So a cast is a very deliberate, it's a very intentional, it's a very guided type of thing. So what he's saying here is these men suddenly cast intentionally to one side and took on a completely new set of conceptions and motives. And you might ask, and fair enough, well, where does this come from? Well, this is going to be explained, and that's the solution that we're talking about. It will be explained later on in the book. We're just setting the foundation for what the mindset needs to be. If you are one of those, it's either going to die or get spiritual help, and in the form of a vital spiritual experience, not just a cool thing, but something that's vital, necessary, that you go through, that you actually experience. So I think this is a very powerful piece. And to Joe's point, there's the asterisk there. And why did they put it here on page 27? For amplification, go see
Index 2.
Index 2. And what did we study? You're going to have a big change, and you got to have willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness in order to make it happen. So they just everything keeps coming back to home plate here. I love this. I love his honesty and candor, and I think this is what's important. Somewhere in here, doesn't he say hopeless? Maybe not. But my point is that hope with a strategy is a hope to be reckoned with. Hope without a strategy is dangerous, in my opinion. So what he's saying here is there is exceptions, and if you cast aside old thoughts, old motives, and take on a whole new thing, in other words, go do completely different. And so that's what he's.
So Dave, going to your question about that word hopeless, he doesn't. The doctor never uses the word hopeless, but what he does say is up here. He says, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover." Okay, so what the doctor is actually mentioning is he has not seen a miracle occur in somebody that has had a chronic mind like that he had. So what he's saying is are there exceptions? Yes, there's exceptions. It's been happening historically from all of time. But he's saying that there has to be kind of this displacement that occurs where the old ideas, the old concepts that used to drive you are shifted aside and they are replaced. But they're replaced with a very specific placement where he's like the new concepts and motives begin to dominate them. In other words, the old stuff goes away, the new stuff is replaced, and the new stuff is like the things that will bring in the level of drive, motivation, desire. It takes over. The old stuff is gone, the new stuff has replaced it.
So what I take from that, this is, and I will, the listener, this is not casual. This is an all-in proposition. And later we'll hear or read that half measures avail us nothing. They use words like thoroughly, painstakingly. They use words that are very, very clear, precisely. So this is not a half-baked proposition. This is all in, or we go back to that, we go back to that decision that we had to, we were going to end bitter end. So let's not kid ourselves. Let's be very honest about the type of effort that this requires, and that's exactly what he's describing here. And I don't want it to sound overwhelming. It's a very simple program. It's tough to do because of our ego, but it's very, very simple, and it's very, very doable, as you will see as we go on. Okay.
So upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell out the necessary vital spiritual experience. boy, what a wet blanket. I'm telling you, man.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, you go on Easter and Christmas and sit on the back row.
Check, check, check. I do all those things. I donate to the poor. I give of my time. I give service. I tithe. I blah 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 blah. I pray. Whatever it is.
Yep.
Those things are great. I'm not criticizing those things. What did you say a moment ago? Half measures availed us nothing. I believe firmly it is not about the butt sitting in the seat of a pew. It is not the attendance. It is not making sure your clergy sees you in the congregation somewhere or attending services or something like that. There is a change that takes place, and I believe it to be, from personal experience, believe it to be an ongoing change. Throughout my life, there have been times where it was, oh, this is feeling good. This is feeling positive, uplifting, as we talk about vital spiritual experiences. But it's not it's not a destination. It's not something we get there and, okay, well, good. I did all my work and I can coast the rest of the way. I believe in, and again, we'll go through a great deal of this. There is upkeep that's required. There's maintenance that's required to maintain, to keep that spirituality going. And in my experience, ever evolving. My spirituality is not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 25, those kinds of things. No. We are connecting more and getting to know whatever that power greater than myself is, getting to know it more. Right. And so I love that. And it's, what did you say? A wet blanket?
Yeah.
It's
a wet
a
blanket.
little bit of fighting words. Like,
right.
What does it say? Basically, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Well, and what I will do is add one more feather to his arrow where he said, I have ability. I have good sense. I have good character. He had the inner workings of his mind, and he figured that out. Now he's a good church member. And what did all that add up to?
It didn't add up to enough.
Yeah, hopeless situation where the doctor said, I've never seen one exist. So it's all good, but it's not enough. And so that's what we've got to figure out. Okay, what is the solution? If these are all important parts, but we need to coalesce it and come to a very direct step type process of the solution.
Okay, so this next paragraph I think is really vital for people to take a real good hard look at what we've been reading, because we're given like literally an invitation here too. Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. So the invitation here is like, okay, pay good attention to what's coming, because we're going to be shared this recipe that has taken this man from like this experience where he's a slave to alcohol and his experience to where he's free and he can go anywhere that any other man can go, and he will be free. We in turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man. What seemed at first the flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or, if you prefer, a design for living that really works. Now, before we go into anything else, that's what I believe recovery needs to be for everyone. I think it needs to be a design for living that works not just in going to the meetings and what you do before a meeting and after a meeting. It's a design for living, meaning that it needs to be the design for things that you're doing day in and day out, all of your life, and not just like it's only a part of my life in recovery. It needs to be a part of every dimension of your life. Okay? And what's really interesting, they follow that up with that really works. It's not just a design for living, it's a design for living that works in tough going and easy going when things are like humming along and you're successful, but when things are tight and hard. It's not meant to be a fair weather friend to us. It's there for us through the long haul of all life experience that we need to be calling on and utilizing these skills.
And he actually brought this up early on in his story. He said, on talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It is a design for living that works in rough going. He then goes, and turns around. It's a design that really works. So that word design, why did he choose that word? A design.
I'm just thinking the word creation.
I think a blueprint.
It's intentional. There's detail to it. It's not this amorphous, good luck to you. No, it's very, very designed. That's why he put that word. And I think that's why he said it again. So it's intentional. We're conscientious. We've got to be deliberate about this, because it all feeds back to, if you're as seriously alcoholic as we are, then you go to the bitter end or you get this. And if you want this, then here's the design. So they're not just saying, go stand on a street corner and wait till the spiritual thing comes. No, there is a design. There's a strategy to give the hope that we're talking about. And I think that's why he brings this up a couple times, because the design is very clear and to the point.
So continuing. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. These having religious affiliations will find here nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. We think it no concern of our...
I think it's important. Yeah. You read about William James there, and that's the same guy that referred to back in the spiritual experience that said this is the educational variety. Remember, he said most of our experience is what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety. They come to us gradually, and a lot of that depends on our effort. You just said it. As soon as we are willing and honest enough to try.
Again, going back to the principles.
Yep. What's the key? What's the keystone here?
Honesty.
We got to be willing and honest and open to try. It doesn't say complete. It doesn't say finish, make it to the finish line today. It says honest enough to try.
Yeah. What does one step look like? What does one step look like? So often there's that pushback and this resistance and stubbornness and fear over what that might look like and how many things I'm going to have to change and what's behind door number 2 and all of this. Yeah. So, just try.
He brings this up again to just remind us yet again. There must be something in the addict alcoholic mind that requires reminding. I'll sign up for that.
I think if you really look at the way most addicts and alcoholics are made up, we get very frustrated with having to be told again and again and again. But there's a necessity to that madness, because we don't hear it the first time. We don't hear it the second time. It's got to be pounded into us again and again and again and again and again. And it goes back to, you don't read this book once. You make it a textbook. Why? Because sometimes we need to be refreshed of, why didn't I see that before? It's the creation of repetition that helps us actually acquire the skill set to accomplish getting out of the dilemma of the problem we created and into the solution that isn't a part of the way that we creatively do life, and that again, the displacement stuff. I mean, the spiritual appendix makes it very clear. It's like others will see it in you long before you see it in yourself. And that is so true.
I really like this statement. There is no friction among us. We're not getting in a spiritual debate. You do it your way, and here's some things. Get rid of some of these things. We're going to coach you, and then let's come back and discuss it. Let's have an honest, straight-up conversation about what your experience was like. We're not going to argue over what your God looks like and what mine looks like. Let's not create friction. But the reason I say that is I'm a guy that liked friction. Why? Because I didn't like the truth. And what was the truth? I didn't have spirituality, so I'm going to create friction and distort the conversation, so I divert it over there, so it's not on me.
So continuing, we think it no concern of ours that religious bodies, we think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be an entirely personal affair with which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or his present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understand it. Then a chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who were once in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we recovered. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language and from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages and believe that it is only by full disclosing ourselves and our problems that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing.
I think that's a very powerful encouragement. We're going to describe further what alcoholism is. And we're not going to argue over the spiritual experience. We're going to give you clear-cut directions. There it is. There's the design. Clear-cut directions are showing how we recovered. And in the first forward, it says precisely. And then 42 experiences where here's what people did. And the good news is they sat down and for our benefit, wrote those experiences down, and you can learn. And so I think that's an important comment, describes in his own language or from her own language, from his or her point of view, the way they established the relationship with God.
Now, I would just remind our audience and us too that principle that William Herbert Spencer shared with us in the spiritual experience, okay, which can, and I'm just going to read it right quick. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer. I share that with you because we have that just human condition where we question everything and we try to pick everything apart. And in this particular part of the book, where I would like to give you an invitation is very clear. Please don't look at this in a critical eye. Try to look at what you don't have and the experiences that these people have had that can enhance the quality of the experience that you're having. Okay, because the people that you're in meetings with, the people that you go to AA meetings with, your sponsors, the fellowship, they all have their own personal experiences as well. And those experiences are a whole hodgepodge of different experiences that can show you that personal journey into spiritual experience, transforming somebody's alcoholic state from an alcoholic state into a full recovered state. The quality of what we're inviting you to do is to just stay honest, open-minded, and willing in the process, and don't allow yourself to do contempt prior to investigation, because it will keep you blocked.
This was a big reading today, and my parting shot is I just really appreciate Dr. Jung and looking candidly at Roland Hazard and saying ideas, emotions that were once guiding forces were cast aside. I'm asking you to sit down, be honest with yourself, take a pad of paper and a pen and say, what's hurting? What does not serve me? Is it my ego? Is it my fear? What is it that I need to cast aside? Now, I'm not suggesting that we just say that and it's gone. But until we name some of these things, what lies am I telling myself? The first one is that I'm not worthy. That's the biggest lie we ever tell ourselves, that we're not worthy. You are worthy. And so I would invite you to sit down and look at that word cast on page 27 and look what the doctor said. This is a well-seasoned doctor looking at someone who he thought was quite hopeless. And yet there's a phenomenon that takes place, and it starts with us naming what we need to cast aside and then making a list and just being honest with ourselves. And that was monumental for me. That was the first step in the vital spiritual experience. I won't go into that detail today, but that's the first piece is naming it and being honest with myself. So I really encourage you to take a hard look at that and to do that exercise.
Thanks to both of you. To you viewers and listeners, there is a way. If you're hurting, if you cannot seem to beat this thing, there is a way. Don't give up. We're here to help you. We're 2 guys, 3 guys, perhaps a few states away, perhaps a few countries away, an ocean or whatever it is. But you're not alone. And the very last line of that chapter, there is a solution. I circled this just now. It says, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. How many times in this book, I wonder, how many times in this book are we given the message, we're not alone. We're not the only one. It's very powerful. A very hard, dark, painful experience. That's what's brought us together is pain. Sorrow, sadness, regret, misery, and all those kinds of things. And so from this, please journey with us and go with us and help us overcome this thing together. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here today, for your effort, for your willingness and genuineness. I appreciate you both. Respect you very much. If you guys haven't done so already, gotten your own copy of the big book or downloaded the Hobble Creek Behavioral Health app, get a free online version of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you'll go to our page, like and share, subscribe, share the message. You're wonderful. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Do Your Dailies podcast. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Do Your Dailies Big Book podcast. If you like what you hear and you want more, please like and subscribe and share this show with your friends, with your clients, with your sponsees. That's the best way to support us bringing you more recovery content. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and X at Do Your Dailies. This podcast is sponsored by Hobble Creek Health and is edited and produced by Nielsen Digital.